What is the situation in Zimbabwe now?
Well, I think the issues are quite a multiplicity. One is on human rights. It remains an issue with civil society whereby we want the rights of the communities to be respected. Diamonds are not just mined in the sky, they are mined in a community where people have lived for hundreds of years. And therefore we would want to see the rights of the community being respected. Of late, the problem has not much been with the army, but with the private security guards who have been employed by the companies, who have been setting dogs on the artisanal miners and the villagers who have been caught trespassing in the diamond fields. Whilst the level of violence has significantly gone down, we are still concerned that here and there we have people who are being harassed by the guards. And we believe Zimbabwe has got a very functional judiciary system, where if people have been caught in the wrong side of the law, they should be treated in a humane manner according to the laws of the land, rather than guards taking the law into their own hands. The other right that we want to see being respected is the right of the communities themselves, like when they are being asked to leave their traditional home to live elsewhere, there is need to compensate them. And the compensation should not just be a decree from the companies, but there has to be negotiation between the company and the affected families. Then there's also the issue of the environment, whereby some of the companies are dumping toxic waste into the river, and this is affecting families who use that water downstream. We have also received reports of livestock dying as a result of drinking toxic water from the nearby river. Then possibly the most important issue that as civil society we've been fighting for, it's about transparency and accountability. To us, it's not enough that diamonds are being mined, that diamonds are being sold. What is most important to us and to the common man in the street is to ensure that every diamond is being accounted for, is to ensure that money that is coming from diamonds find its way into the treasury, so that government can distribute these resources equitably for the benefit of the Zimbabwean people. Therefore, we still have a problem whereby you have the Minister of Finance saying it is not receiving enough money from the Minister of Mines from the diamonds, and that is a very big cause for concern. And I think at the moment that's the biggest problem that Zimbabwe is having. It is about transparency. It is about accounting for the diamonds which are being mined out of Marange.
And so where is this money going? You had mentioned earlier that Anjan wasn't paying anything, and you had talked about how the money needed to be, was maybe being sidelined by Mugabe, etc. Maybe you want to talk about that and say, what is the issue with the money? That it's not just that the money's not being paid, but no one knows where the money is going, you were saying earlier.
Yeah, it's quite a big challenge, especially when the Minister of Finance says he has not received a single cent from Anjan. Anjan is the biggest mine in Marange, which has got about 8 shafts, literally meaning about 8 mines. And it being the biggest mine in Marange and having remitted absolutely nothing to the treasury, it leaves many people wondering, where is the money going? Could there be parallel government structures which are siphoning that money? Could it be funding political activities? Could it be contributing to further polarization of the country and of government? And it's difficult to really tell where the money is going, but there are big fears that the money could be finding its way into certain groups of people, which may include those in the security sector, who are accused of running a parallel government for whatever reasons. Could be in preparation to prevent the democratic, free and fair election taking place in the country. So it's hard for me to really say where is the money going because I don't have any paper trail. All I can say is that the Minister of Finance is saying he's not receiving anything from Anjan, despite the fact that it's the biggest mine which has got also sold the highest volume of diamonds so far in Zimbabwe.
Is that money being used to finance elections or something? Do we know if that's the case? Or what, is there going to be, either is there a call for elections? Are the elections going to be taking place in Zimbabwe soon? And what do you expect will happen then?
There could be a relationship between that, the proceeds from diamonds and elections, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the money is going to fund the normal election process in Zimbabwe. It could be used by certain groups of people for their own campaign purposes, because if the money is supposed to contribute to the running of elections, we expect the money to be receipted by Treasury. And if Treasury is saying they are not aware of where the money is going, then it could be that certain people could be receiving that money for their own election campaigns.
What should the diamond and jewelry industry do? What would you like? What is your message for the jewelry industry regarding the situation in Zimbabwe or in general, human rights and diamonds?
Well, I think it is very important for the jewelry industry to try to understand the conditions prevailing on the ground, as well as to try to understand the efforts which are being made to normalize the situation and to improve the governance of diamonds in Zimbabwe. I don't think this is just an internal matter. It is a very international matter, in that diamonds mined in Zimbabwe end up everywhere in the world, and it is important for the jewelers to have a very strong interrogation of their suppliers as to where the diamonds are coming from. Like we've got 4 mines in Zimbabwe, in Marange. They are rated differently. Some of them are remitting, some of them are not remitting. So it is very critical that the jewelers should ask strongly whether the company which sold those diamonds is remitting money to Treasury. If that company is not remitting money to Treasury, then buying those diamonds could be contributing to conflict in the country. But at the same time, there's need to also help in improving the monitoring role of civil society in Zimbabwe to ensure that we continue monitoring what is happening on the ground in terms of human rights, in terms of improving the welfare of the families that have been affected by diamond mining activities, so that the community in Marange is happy about what is happening with their diamonds. The diamonds ought to be a blessing to the local population rather than being a curse. Therefore, I can't really say much about what the jewelers have to do, but they need to speak to their conscience. If they really feel that the diamonds they are buying are contributing to peace and development in Zimbabwe, so be it. But if they've got a lot of questions and doubts about what is happening with the money they are paying for those diamonds, then it's up to them. The verdict is for the jewelers to decide what to do with their money.
Do you think jewelers should buy Marange diamonds now?
It's hard to tell what jewelers should do. Like I've already told you, there are 4 mines in Marange. Some of them are remitting. Some of them are not remitting a single cent, which is raising a lot of eyebrows as to where the money is going. It could be grossly unfair to put all the diamonds under one bracket, but I think there is a need for jewelers to identify those companies which are not remitting to Treasury and try to understand where that money is going, especially those which are alleged to be in partnership with the army, like Anjin, which is a Chinese company mining in partnership with the army in Zimbabwe. I think such diamonds may be contributing to conflict in the country, and it is not advisable to buy something that they may end up contributing to human suffering. But then there are also other companies which are said to be doing well in terms of corporate social responsibility, like Marange Resources, which the Minister of Finance is also saying they are remitting to Treasury. I think it will not be fair to punish them with the same amount of punishment with companies which are not remitting, such as Anjin. So there is need to get the facts about the remission of money to treasury, as well as the relationship between every company and the neighboring, the local community. That can help to make a decision whether to buy diamonds or not.
The situation in the rest of Africa, are there human rights abuses taking place in the diamond industry in the Congo or other areas, or are things pretty much clean in Africa?
When you look at some of the biggest diamond producers in Africa, they have the poorest populations on the continent. I'm talking about countries like Angola. I'm talking about countries like Democratic Republic of Congo and my own country, Zimbabwe. Looking at these countries, you realize that one, there's a serious problem of governance. There is a problem of democracy. There's no democracy. And yet these are some of the biggest diamond producers in the world. Therefore, trade in diamonds could be the factor which is helping to strengthen unaccountable dictatorial regimes, helping them to hold on to power. And because of the proceeds they get from diamonds, normally they use that money to suppress the population, sometimes even causing internal displacement of people, serious human rights violations, equipping the military, which can become a proxy of the ruling party in those particular countries. And therefore, diamonds in those countries have become part of the political problem, whereby they've become the dictator's best friend, assisting to cling to power, assisting to suppress the opposition, to muzzle the press, and to make people just helpless, because it's very easy for one to get rich very quickly with proceeds from diamonds, where in other parts of the world you have to work very hard in order to get the money which these African diamond producers can make within just selling one transaction of diamonds. They can get millions, if not billions of dollars, which they can squander to prop up their waning political fortunes.
When you go back, first you're going to the Kimberley Process, meaning you understand. Is the Kimberley Process the solution here?
Well, I'm not a big fan of the Kimberley Process. I believe they have some relevance in terms of trying to bring together civil society, governments, and business to discuss diamond-related issues. But I don't think the Kimberley Process is well prepared to deal with the contemporary problems associated with diamonds, especially where human rights violations are perpetrated by governments and by companies. I believe the Kimberley Process is trying to run away from its responsibility to protect communities that are living in or near diamond producing areas. In its core document, the Kimberley Process says it is there to deal with conflict diamonds, which it narrowly defines as diamonds which are used by rebel movements to try to overthrow legitimate governments, and the concomitant human rights violations which were witnessed in West Africa during those civil wars. But if you look at it now, the tide has turned. There is a variable in one constant. The variable is on the perpetrators of violence. It's no longer the rebel movements, but these are the so-called legitimate governments. And you've got a constant, which is the human rights violations. That is not ended. You still have people being beaten, being killed, being raped because of diamonds. And the Kimberley Process has tried to run away from its responsibility because the perpetrators of these abuses are members of the Kimberley Process. Very vocal members, some of them. And they are now the sources of the diamonds, the so-called diamond producers of this world. Therefore, the Kimberley Process has adopted the approach of hear no evil, see no evil, say no evil. And the approach is simply to feel good and to make industry and the consumers feel good when the communities where the diamonds are coming from are marooned on the no man's land between poverty and malnutrition. And therefore, I've got a lot of reservations with regard to diamonds which are being certified by the Kimberley Process with the tag conflict-free diamonds. But when I look at the many dimensions of conflict, which include poverty, deprivation, internal displacements, these definitions, they have eluded the Kimberley Process, whether it's through ignorance or it's a well-calculated move to simply get the diamonds out of the diamond-producing countries by any means necessary. I don't know, but I don't think the Kimberley Process is well equipped to deal with the current problems affecting diamond-producing countries.
So what advice do you have for America's jewelry industry? What would you like them, just to try to shoot it again, what would you like them to do? This is your chance to talk to Americans and say, hey, I'm Farai Maguwu and this is what I think.
You see, one thing that we need to agree is that the Kimberley Process has failed and there's need to look beyond the KP. There's need for the jewelers to group, to unite, to share information about what is happening on the ground, to take some very strong and loud positions if they feel that diamonds coming out of a particular region are not promoting development, are not promoting peace, the communities are not protected. Then I think that the jewelers should shun away from such diamonds. They need to thoroughly interrogate the suppliers of their diamonds, where the diamonds are coming from. They need strong moral values so that they don't just get diamonds for the sake of money. Although I understand that they are into business and the primary objective of business is to make profit. But I think there is need to have business with some ethics, with some values. And one way is to establish communication between the jewelers and the local communities through non-governmental organizations in the countries where diamonds are being produced, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Angola, Zimbabwe, in Namibia, Botswana, to try to get more information on conditions prevailing on the ground so that decisions which they make are well informed.
What happened to you when you had an experience there? What happened to you when you were after this, you had given some information and you had a problem? What happened to you in Zimbabwe?
Well, I got arrested after that interaction with the Kimberley Process monitor.
Yeah, what was that? What exactly did you do with the Kimberley Process monitor?
Well, I met with the Kimberley Process monitor. I shared with him my observations of what is happening in Marange at that time. And I was arrested 2 days later, and I was charged with the communicating falsehoods which were prejudicial to the economic interest of Zimbabwe. And I stayed in jail for about 40 days. And after 40 days, I was granted bail and the charges were later dropped. So we continued with our work even after the charges had been dropped until this very day. We continue to monitor what is happening on the ground. We also continue to educate the community about their rights. We also try to conscientize the nation so that people can join in our campaign to demand transparency, accountability, and respect for community rights of the villagers who are surrounding the diamond fields.
You're going back to Zimbabwe. What are you going to do when you get back there?
It's a commitment that we have taken that we need to stand up. Zimbabwe is the only country that we call home. And we believe God has blessed our nation with vast natural resources. And if these resources are well managed and well governed, I think our gross domestic product is going to increase. I believe the welfare of the Zimbabwean people is going to be taken care of. And no one can do it except ourselves. Therefore, when I get back to Zimbabwe, I will continue with the research and advocacy work, conscientizing the Zimbabwean population. But more importantly, we are also targeting the mining companies themselves to bring them on the negotiating table so that we can share our values with them, our expectations, and also we listen to them, whatever their concerns are, so that we can somehow come up with a consensus on the way forward with regard to diamond mining activities. So our work will continue. That is basically research and advocacy and some form of networking and consensus building towards improved governance of diamonds in Zimbabwe.